Hello, dear viewers. I'm George from Ireland, and I'm commenting on Sadiq Khan being re-elected as the Mayor of London. Sadiq Khan has not made it by anything much as was predicted. The opinion polls showed he was going to run away with it. He was going to win by about 20 percentage points. Now, this is the sixth ever mayoral election in London. Remember, the office of Mayor of London was only created in 2000. There's Lord Mayor of London, which is a completely different office, and that was founded in 1189. That only refers to the City of London, the financial district within a mile of St Paul's Cathedral, whereas Mayor of London is for Greater London, which is much, much bigger, which is about 25 miles east to west, 25 miles north to south. So Sadiq Khan, he was first elected in 2016. He was due to face re-election in May 2020. Consequent upon coronavirus, it was delayed by a 12-month. So he served a 5-year term instead of a 4-year term. This term he's just been re-elected to will be a 3-year term to get it back into schedule of every 4 years. So Sadiq Khan, he's also notable for, so far as I know, being the first Muslim to be elected the mayor of any European city. So, Mr. Khan is obviously a Labour politician. He was a Labour MP. So he was facing Sean Bailey, who was the Conservative candidate. Obviously, Bailey was the main challenger, and but Bailey really exceeded expectations because I was just thinking, why has he failed to connect? Now, Sean Bailey is also unusual as a Conservative in being black. There are not many black Conservative politicians. I mean, there are a few now. You go back to the 90s, there were virtually none. And Sean Bailey, he's not the typical background for a Conservative politician, quite apart from his ethnicity. He grew up in a difficult family situation without much money. Conservatives are often accused of being with the party of the wealthy, of not caring about those who are struggling. But anyway, despite his difficult start in life, he went to university, he achieved a lot. He's become a Conservative. In the London election, you vote for your first preference and your second preference. Now, people thought that in the first round that Sadiq Khan will get over 50%. If you get over 50% the first round, that's it, you're mayor. They don't even look at the second preferences. Now, no one has ever been elected on first preferences because there were 20 candidates. So Sadiq Khan, he topped the poll, but the first preferences got 40%, but obviously not enough to exclude having to look at second preferences. Sean Bailey got 35%, so rather better than was forecast. The other thing about opinion polls is they consistently overrate Labour because it's fashionable to say you're a Labourite, you're compassionate, you care about human rights, you're decent, you're anti-racist. If you're a Conservative, you're often calumniated. So this is timid Tory factor. You're a foul, racist, bigot, and you're just greedy and selfish and all the rest of it. Whereas Labour are cuddly and morally upstanding. So that's the popular prejudice. So perhaps we should have taken that into account. But this timid Tory factor would be worth like 2 percentage, 3 percentage points of the opinion polls, not as much as actually transpired. So Sadiq Khan, yeah, he won the first round, but by only 5 percentage points, not the something like 20 percentage points that some opinion polls forecast. And who was in third position? It was Shan Berry, the Green Party candidate. So it's actually been a bumper harvest for the Green Party. I mean, they've got 8 people in the Scottish Parliament. They've got nobody in the Welsh Assembly. They've got over 50 local councillors. So they're buoyed up by good results for them in Germany, where they seem to be the second biggest party, supplanting the Social Democrats as the other major party. The Social Democrats, who've been one of the 2 major parties in Germany for well over a century. Louisa Porritt is the Liberal Democrat candidate, and they're down on a measly 4%, beaten out of sight by the Greens. Now, it made me think of Jonathan Porritt, who was one of the founders of the Green Party, or the Ecology Party was back in the day. But so far as I'm aware, she's not actually related to him. I've looked her up. And there were various independent candidates. Nico or Milan, I don't know what he stood for. Lawrence Fox of the Reclaim Party, as I wanted to reopen London. That famous old Harrovian actor who polled 2% of the vote. Brian Rose, that American banker, presumably British citizen, who's here in London, launched this very high-profile campaign with these billboard screens beside the Westway Road and things like that. really high octane, glam American style campaign, but only garnered in 1% of the vote. There was even a rejoined EU candidate who polled 1% of the vote. The infamous Lord Binface 1%, the Women's Equality Party under 1%, Piers Corbyn as an elder brother of the erstwhile leader of Her Majesty's most loyal opposition, Jeremy Corbyn. Piers Corbyn let London live. He's an anti-lockdown chap. He got under 1%, and I actually saw him at an anti-lockdown rally in Hyde Park a while ago. There was the Animal Welfare Party with 0.7. The UK Independence Party, yes, it still exists, 0.6. The UK Independence Party has been made extinct as a party in politics. They're still a political party, if you grasp the distinction. They've got not a single councillor throughout the United Kingdom. They're going to be dissolved, and there are various other tiny parties. The Social Democrats, wow, they're still hanging on. Okay, so coming back to the major candidates. So then they eliminated all but the top two, and they looked at second preferences. Well, therefore, on second preferences, 69% of them went to Sadiq Khan, and only 30% of them went to Sean Bailey. So this system was always thought to work against the Conservatives because Liberal Democrats would invariably prefer Labour to Liberal Democrat, to Conservative. Greens would invariably prefer Labour to Conservative, and so forth. So therefore, when you take all things into consideration, Sadiq Khan got 55% of the vote. Now, there is no limit on the number of terms one can serve as Mayor of London. However, no one's done it more than twice. Now, Ken Livingstone served 2 terms, sought a third, was defeated by Boris Johnson. When Boris Johnson was incumbent, Ken Livingstone attempted a comeback and failed to do so. So he stood 4 times as Mayor of London. Ken Livingstone won the first 2, lost the second 2. So there we have Sadiq Khan. So 2 visible ethnic minority candidates, a British Pakistani against a black British politician. And perhaps that's highly apposite, given that the visible ethnic minority population of London is over 40%. And some of the other party candidates were visible ethnic minorities as well. So in the London Assembly, there are 25 members. Now, Labour's got 11 of those, down from 12. So they've retained their plurality in the London Assembly. Now, the London Assembly has got is divided into constituency seats as well as London list seats. Okay, so they're like South West London, Ealing, Harrow, blah blah blah, various boroughs put together. So they remain the biggest party in the London Assembly, not by much. The Conservatives on 9, the Green Party on 3. So Labour have gone down 1, the Conservatives have gone up 1, the Green Party's gone up 1, and the Liberal Democrats pushed into 4th place, again with a measly 2 seats, both list seats. The UK Independence Party lost both their people in the London Assembly. So had Sadiq Khan won by a country mile, I thought he might have gone for a 3rd term. Perhaps he won't. Think it's meet to step down next time. Now, it's again maybe unsurprising to win by much because crime has gone up considerably. Now, he cannot order the police what to do, has some sort of indirect control over the police. And the transport, it was going all right, I suppose. He's not really bitten the bullet at the difficult decisions over how to use self-driving buses, self-driving trains, because there'd be terrible strikes if he did that. So he's got various problems to deal with, and Transport for London's lost so much money as so few people have been travelling over the past year. There's been less ticket revenue, less advertising revenue. Why would you advertise on public transport? Almost nobody's going on public transport for almost a year. Okay. So that they can just really scrutinise him, the London Assembly, and under half of them are sympathetic to him. In the constituencies of the London Assembly, every single one was won by either Labour or Conservatives, and inner London was Labour, and the ring around it, the donut, if you will, that was all Conservative, the leafier suburbs, partly to do with income. So that's enough from the London Assembly. He's one of the big beasts of the Labour Party, Sadiq Khan. He's affable, politics aside. He's seen as a moderate, and he's also an example of a Muslim who's very well assimilated. Most people find unthreatening. There is some anti-Muslim prejudice in this country. I think not towards him. Now, the next thing is, on a national level, the Labour Party has performed poorly. Well, these local council elections to the Scottish Parliament, they've made a very poor showing. Only in Wales have they done well and retained their plurality. They've got 30 out of the 60 seats in the Welsh Parliament. Mark Drayford as First Minister for Wales, and Andy Burnham re-elected by a landslide, 67% of the vote in Liverpool. So they retain control of some mayoralties in Northern England, some councils in Northern England, not a single one in Scotland so far as I know, lots in Wales, most in Wales in fact. So a pretty dismal night for the Labour Party. And Sir Keir Starmer is the leader of the Labour Party. He's dismissed Angela Rayner, but is that just shifting the blame? Should Starmer go? There doesn't seem to be much of a groundswell for unseating him, because I thought he was a very creditable leader with his distinguished career in public service before he entered politics, which I was knighted. He's intelligent without coming across as too professorial. He's amiable, but somehow doesn't connect, doesn't have the common touch. So he's not as charismatic as Blair was, not quite as dynamic, but a safe pair of hands. Passed the Downing Street test for me, but should it be and should the leadership be handed over to someone with more of a track record of success? Mark Drakeford, Sadiq Khan, Andy Burnham. These are the Labour big beasts who've won, who've actually governed something. So maybe it should be one of them. And Starmer, he sacked Dr. Annalise Dodds, his shadow chancellor exchequer. But is this changing deck chairs on the Titanic? It's not going to change things fundamentally, is it? It's just doesn't exculpate him by scapegoating his underlings. He said he carries the can for this. Should he go? Because a year and a half into a parliament, they should be doing far, far better. I know the vaccination program's gone quite well. The economy is hopefully starting to roar. There's some teething problems with Brexit. How bad is this? All these scandals about Boris Johnson's wallpaper don't seem to be impacting very much, or track and trace and supposedly dodgy donors getting these fat contracts and then providing a really substandard service when they're charging way over the odds. For some reason, Labour doesn't seem to be able to land a punch there. So squeezed by the SNP in Scotland, by Conservatives in Northern England, Conservatives proving that there are no-go areas for them, winning some of these proletarian constituencies that Labour held for over a century, that it seems that 2019, that it wasn't entirely a fluke. Taking Hartlepool. If you told me a year ago the Conservatives were going to take Hartlepool, I would think you'd had many too many of Newquay Brown. So that's it. I don't think there's going to be an attempt on Starmer's leadership yet. If things don't improve considerably by early next year, I think there will be. From Labour's perspective, should he go? They say one swallow does not a summer make, but one a drop of rain does not a winter make. How bad is this result? I mean, it's not catastrophic, but it's certainly disappointing. 11 years into a Conservative government, they should be much better. Maybe next year, the economy doesn't grow as fast as we think, if Brexit is seriously difficult still, if there have to be swinging tax rises and financial retrenchment, people are feeling the pain, then they might blame the Conservatives more. Maybe Labour will do better. All right, toodle pip.